All right, hello everybody. Welcome into the next mini series here that we have on 3 Up, 3 Down. Focal point here today, and in this next mini series in season 4 is on obstruction. And today we'll take a look mostly at type A obstruction for plays at the plate. So that's what we've got here on tap here for us today. A couple announcements, reminders, and things like that before we go ahead and dive right into the obstruction rule. Like I said, we'll start the new mini series here this week and continue on for about the rest of the month, really, the next 3 or 4 Fridays, and take a look at obstruction. We'll break it down into a couple different categories. Today will be type A for mostly plays at the plate. We'll also talk about some plays at the bases. Next week will be about rundowns, so we'll spend a lot of time just in a single session on rundowns. There'll be some miscellaneous obstruction in type A that we'll clean up in the third week, and in the final week we'll finally get to type B. So that's kind of the outline generally here that we're looking for here in season 4 on this next mini-series, like I said, on obstruction. That'll take us the remaining parts of the month to go ahead and get through. A couple other things here that we got going on in the region. We're going to start to go ahead and release what we call a post-game feedback form. It'll be a Google Doc that we'll release out to everyone, and it's just really a way for us to kind of share some information with each other. What number one are you working on? Secondly, what was some of the feedback that you may have received on the diamond? What was some of the feedback that you may be giving to other people too? That way we're more in tune as a committee with what exactly you guys are going through on the front lines. So we were still in the process of putting that survey or that post-game meeting form together, but as games probably starting in a lot of leagues next week and the week after, and as we approach the May 1st date, I want to get that out to everyone, and again, just to provide us with a two-way street of feedback so that we know what you guys are going through, and that way whatever we do is more aligned to what exactly you need from us. So be on the lookout for that one. That should be emailed out probably sometime next week. And the last thing, many of you guys have already started to talk to me. You've either sent me messages or emails or text or whatever, which have been awesome, about which focal points you're working on. I think that's great. Proper use of eyes, chest to ball, taking the spotlight, and things like that have all been a very popular theme. So just continue to revisit those things. A lot of people listen back to those focal points as they're driving to games or as they're sitting and waiting for games. So just continue to be diligent and mindful of what exactly you're working on and how exactly you plan on getting better every single game and every single opportunity that you got there. So that's all announcements here that I've got here for us. Tom, if there's anything from the international side of things here or the headquarters, I'll let you go ahead and take the spotlight here.
No, it's been a pretty calm week with the holiday and whatnot. We were closed on Monday, so we're playing a little bit of catch up. Still making plans for the tournament season, and that's pretty much where we are right now.
That's good news. So tournament baseball is exciting to hear about, and obviously we got to do some things to get there first, both as fundamentals here for us, and then obviously as an organization too. So, well, without further ado then, everybody, let's go ahead and get started with our first day of obstruction. And here, before I go ahead and start to share my screen and go through the PowerPoint and stuff like that, I want to start very similarly to how we did with regards to interference. So if you remember, in the interference piece of things, we just started out and I generally asked a question like, what is interference? What does it look like? What do we have to have for interference? So I want to start there here, but rather turn the page then to obstruction. So obviously obstruction and type A obstruction is our focal point here today. Specifically on plays at the plate here is where we want to do the majority of our focus. So let's go ahead and think about obstruction here right now. Think about its definition, what you have to have for obstruction and things like that. And let's go ahead and fill up the chat here with what exactly we know about obstruction. What is it? What do we have to have? What does it look like? Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look then at obstruction. Go ahead and fill up the chat here with what exactly we know about obstruction. Let's see what's coming in here. DJ, I'll give it to you and Seth here to go ahead and read some of that stuff from the chat. I'm trying to get the PowerPoint all loaded up here.
You're all good. First one, fielder hinders base runner without possession of the ball, defensive player impeding or hindering any runner with having the ball. I'm assuming that's supposed to be without having the ball. Impeding or hindrance of a runner by a fielder without possession of the ball. So yeah, that's
Good. So I think you've
right
done a really
on
good
there.
job here of getting the basic definition for us. And I think one of the things that we just have to concentrate here on obstruction with regards to Little League is that our rule is a little bit different and I think much better and clearer here in this too. So a lot of us got this. A fielder, while not in possession of the ball, impedes the progress of the runner. And I thought we got that criteria pretty good. Now, just as we did with interference, a couple things here in terms of guiding principles to think about within the criteria of this rule from Rule 2.0. Okay, so we've got the criteria: a fielder who, while not in possession of the baseball, impedes the progress of any runner. Pretty black and white, pretty clear there. So a couple guiding principles to branch off of that idea. Number one, if you have the baseball or the softball, if you have the ball, you can't be called for obstruction. Okay, so obstruction cannot be called on a fielder with possession of the ball. Secondly, contact is not a requirement. So just because you have contact doesn't mean there's obstruction. And you do not need contact to go ahead and have obstruction either. Very similar to what we talked about with regards to interference. Now, as we know, there are two different types of obstruction. We'll spend a lot of time today and over the next couple of weeks on type A. That's a play being made on the obstructed runner in which the ball is dead at that point. We'll talk a little bit more about that here today too. Type B, which is kind of towards the back end of the series, is no play being made on the runner. That will allow play to proceed. So important to note here the difference between when the ball is dead in type A, examples that we'll see today, and then type B, which we'll cover later on in the month once we get to that point. And I think one of the really key points here about about obstruction when we see it is just to make sure that we know and ask ourselves who made the mistake. And I think that's going to be a huge clarifying factor as we take a look at a lot of the clips that we're going to get ready to go through here today, is who exactly goes ahead and makes the mistake. And what we mean by that specifically is reverting back to a concept that we discussed during interference, and that is the right to a base path. Remember, if it is a batted ball, the right to the base path belongs then to the fielder. However, if it is a thrown ball, the base path then belongs to the offense. And it's important to note here the back end of that without having to alter the path or the slide to the base. Okay, so just a couple guiding principles there to keep in mind as we look at the general definition of interference. Tom, anything else to add into that mix?
No, that was fine. I have no problem with anything you said.
Cool. So, like I said, the Little League obstruction rule is pretty specific, and I think what's important to note here about the Little League obstruction rule is that we don't have a clause. We do not have a clause in it that says anything about protecting a fielder in the process of fielding a thrown ball. So all we have here is very clear language: a fielder who, while not in possession of the ball, impedes the progress of the runner. And in this case, obstruction shall be called on a defensive player who blocks off a baseline, home plate from a base runner while not in possession of the ball. So very simply, if you don't have the baseball or you don't have the softball, you cannot be in the way. You cannot alter the path of the runner. It is that clear. And again, there is no provision that allows the fielder to be in a spot or say that he has to be there to field a thrown ball. Remember, the right of the base path with a thrown ball belongs to the runner. And this is why I think it's important to point out our obstruction rule here in Little League, very different and a lot more clear than some other interpretations may be there. Let's take a look at what exactly the rim tells us a little bit about this. If the defense does not have the ball and impedes the progress of the runner, obstruction shall be called. It's literally that simple. It makes no difference if the defense is fielding a thrown ball or waiting for the throw. If the defense does not have the ball in his or her possession, it is obstruction if they impede the progress of any runner. I think that's clear for us to see. And as we take a look at clips, that second point from the rim is important for us to note. Again, there is no protection in our rule that allows a fielder to be in a spot to field a thrown ball. If he's in that spot or she is in that spot and impedes the progress of runner without the ball, we have obstruction. It's literally that clear. And we'll see some clips here to see that. Again, make sure that we understand here when runners are entitled to the base. Okay, this is a thrown ball, so the runner is entitled to the base or the plate without having to alter their path to slide or achieve the base. This means that they don't have to deviate and they shouldn't have to slow down. And again, if the fielder blocks any part of the base without possession of the ball and the runner is hindered in any way in your judgment by force to slide, alter his path, slow down, whatever the case may be, the runner is obstructed and the obstruction then shall be called. Okay, so those are some important things for us to see and again think about conceptually and through principles as we get ready to go ahead and look at a few different clips. Now, enforcing the type A obstruction, very simple here. When it occurs, all we're going to do is point, that's obstruction. Remember, on type A, the ball becomes dead. So again, the spotlight theme comes up and very important for us to see. Type A obstruction means the ball is dead. So all we're going to do here is point and say that's obstruction. We're going to take our time and then take the spotlight. We'll call time. Right when we point obstruction, our eyes should go to the rest of the field. Because as you see here, if we have other subsequent base runners, we're going to have to figure out where exactly to place them. So when the obstruction occurs, we're going to point and say that's obstruction. It can be either with the right or the left hand. So we're going to point and say that's obstruction. Our eyes are going to go to the field. We're going to take the spotlight, call time, say that's obstruction. We're going to score the run or whatever the case may be, and then we're going to place any subsequent base runners. So again, just as we talked about in interference, take your time. That's obstruction, time, take the spotlight, and then make sure we get our eyes up when we have the obstruction. That way we can make the right base awards. Now, in terms of awarding runners, the obstructed runner, where we call the obstruction, that runner has to be awarded at least one base beyond the base that was last legally touched. So this is in type A. Okay, so type A obstruction, we've got to advance the runner at least one base beyond the obstruction. And as we see here, and as I mentioned, once we call obstructions and see it, we call obstruction, and then we've got to get our eyes up before we take the spotlight, because any preceding runners there, we've got to figure out how to place and whatnot as well. Okay, so just a couple things mechanically to make sure we know as we enforce obstruction. Any questions, any comments, anything like that here so far, DJ or Seth, in the chat? Anything to add here so far?
Yeah, there's nothing in the chat. I know you hammered it home, but the importance of understanding where our players, our coaches, our parents are going to be seeing this happen, and that's at the MLB level. And our rule, and I don't even want to get into what their rule says, but our rule is very clear of got to have the ball. If you don't have the ball, it's more than likely going to be obstruction, and that is not a case at the MLB level where most of our players, parents, coaches are going to be watching. So it's important to make sure that we understand our definition. And I've had this with personal experience. So just wanted to reiterate that part.
All right, let's take a look at some clips here now. And really what we want to do here is get a little bit more interactive here too. So either by usage of the chat or just speak up. We're going to show you a couple clips here. This first one, let's figure out whether or not this is obstruction. The first clip comes to us from the 2012 World Series, and we'll break down some wedge stuff in the future. The 2012 World Series, wedge theory was kind of really primitive at that time, but I'll kind of show you where exactly we were at in there as well. But here's the play. Ball's in right field. Home plate umpire is Chet Cooper from Ohio District 2, just outside of Youngstown. He is a biology professor at Youngstown State. But nonetheless, he gets the bat out of the way as you see him here, and then he starts to work back to point of plate. So a pretty good little mechanic here for us. Now, the one thing I will say about our plate mechanics for obstruction is if we're using wedge theory, because wedge theory cues off the fielder receiving the throw, we are more likely to be able to get the obstruction call right. Okay, so let's take a look here at the play, let it unfold, and let's determine whether or not this is obstruction. So I'll go ahead and let it roll. Get some replays here. One more here. What are we thinking?
We got one vote for obstruction in the chat.
Why might we have obstruction here? Like, what makes this obstruction? What criteria of the rule do we use here to basically say we have obstruction right here?
Well, he's definitely impeded the progress of the runner without possession of the ball.
You got it. Okay, so he is there. Okay, he is there before the ball. I'm sorry, the fielder is there before he has possession of the ball. So as we see, contact will be made. I'll pause it here once we get there. Here's contact, and obviously the glove is still open. Then he receives the ball. So by our rule, as you see here, here's your contact. Ball's not there. There's no access to the plate whatsoever here as well. The runner has to slide or make contact or whatever it is. This is obstruction. So again, we point and say that's obstruction. Time, take the spotlight, see where your runners are at. You're going to score this run and then place any other runners wherever you feel that they need to go had there been no obstruction.
One thing you can see on this, or at least it appears to me, Stu, is that the runner begins to slide, but realizes he cannot slide because the catcher's in his way.
Absolutely.
Great point. Yep, great point. Great call here by our plate umpire. He points that's obstruction, scores the run, and then moves him over. Let's take a look at the next clip here. A little bit more, not as clear cut, but an interesting one here to debate nonetheless. So ball's popped up into right field. Two fielders converging, so U1 is out in our 4-umpire system. And then it becomes a little bit of a rodeo. So ball gets away. We get one runner to score. Coach is waving on the next runner here. And as we see, here's the play at the plate. So I'll go ahead and slow it down frame by frame. And we'll take a look at a replay angle, a couple replays here. So there's the first runner that scores. And now let's take a look at the actions of our catcher. Any thoughts here?
I've got the runner altering his path around the catcher, and as a result, he impeded him. It's obstruction without possession of the ball.
Okay.
You can see it before that. The ball's bouncing, right, and the runner deviates his path.
Yep. I don't disagree with him. Anybody disagree with Tony there? Seth, you got any thoughts on this?
Pete in the chat said not obstruction.
Okay.
Yeah, I disagree. I disagree with Tony.
Go ahead and kind of explain why here, Seth.
Yeah, so what I've got here is based on our camera angles. Number one, my runner is already out wide, and I don't see him alter his path to try to get to the base. And then also at the same time, remember, Stu brought this up in our discussions, is that alter path can also mean slow down. And I also don't have the runner slowing down here in order to try to avoid contact. So for me, I've got nothing on this play. Had the fielder or the runner been coming in more straight, like the previous runner comes in, I could definitely have it. But the fact that he's already out wide in the green of the turf here, it doesn't alter to me. I've got nothing.
Yeah, I'm with Tony though. I think that he was blocking the path to home plate.
I think if you watch this angle, you could see him turn away.
Yeah,
right. Rather than going straight at, he takes that one step with his left foot a little bit further right. It's close. I definitely see that.
Here's what I will say, and I'm glad that both sides have been made up, because I don't think either one of you are wrong in your explanation, because again, the whether or not the runner is impeded is upon the judgment of the umpire. So your perspective is different. And I think, Tony, you did a really good job talking about how he had to go around. Well, when you're in that argument with the coach and you talk about that, you are literally saying that the position of the fielder without possession of the ball forced the alteration of that path. It's important that we highlight that, because that is the criteria of the rule. And if we're using the criteria of the rule to explain our decision to the coach, then we're valid. Same is true with Seth. And he basically said he felt that he was not slowed down and his path to the plate was not altered because of his already wide approach. Again, both answers are essentially correct, because obstruction here, in terms of being impeded, that impedance, I guess you could say, is all within the umpire's judgment. So I think both sides of the argument here are definitely valid. I'm not going to sit here and say, yes, this was obstruction, or no, it was not. But what I am going to tell you is that when you provide information to the coach and you're using those eyes properly, what we needed to determine in all this is whether or not the runner was obstructed by the position of the fielder without the ball. If your answer is yes, then very easily you've got obstruction. If your answer is no, then you do not, and you let it play on. Tom, anything else to add there? I want to go back here and take a look at the job that our plate umpire does just with executing the mechanics of wedge theory, because again, I think it's important to highlight the fact that for us to get obstruction correctly, wedge theory is a huge piece of that, because we adjust and move with the fielder. So we're cueing off the fielder, which means that we'll probably be more likely to get obstruction calls right. So good job here by the plate umpire. The ball's in the air, and we can see he doesn't take any steps back. He's already stepping or maintaining his stance from where he stepped up at. Okay. Now, as the play unfolds, he's going to hold on to point of plate. We kind of lose that idea here, but we'll eventually pick it back up in the replay. So ball gets kicked around, obviously, in this play, and then let's refocus back on the work of our plate umpire to execute the three fundamentals of wedge positioning. Number one, start closer, 5 to 7 feet. As we see, that's exactly where our umpire is at. He's within that target distance of 5 to 7 feet. Secondly, move with the fielder. As you see, the fielder is up the third base line. We should backpack the catcher and stay on the plate side hip of the catcher. Umpire is right there, literally backpacked right onto the catcher. And then lastly, stay in the window. Keep your head and eyes in between the runner and the fielder. And as you see this tag develop on the back side, the umpire continues to move or step into the wedge. Use those quiet steps to, as we talk about, then stay in the window. Here's a great look. He started point of plate. First runner goes across. Now watch what this umpire had to do. So this first runner scores, and now he's got to fight for position. So he gets in between that runner who had just scored and now gets a better spot here for us. Now, could he have been too close? You could probably argue that. But again, if he stays back, now he's got to fight and try and see through the runner who just scored. So I think his proximity to the play here was more dictated by the fact that the first runner didn't get the heck out of the way than it was him not executing wedge theory correctly. Okay, so he does the wedge really well. And then as we see here, he continues to move and turn with the play into the wedge, continues to stay into that window. Good job here by the plate umpire. And I think this one actually went to replay. We upheld this decision because there was the tag right before he hit the base. And as a result, then, good proper use of eyes, good footwork there. Any other comments there?
Hey, something to note on – yeah, just something to note on fighting for position, guys. And this comes with, obviously recognizing level of play too. But when you're trying to fight for position, you can tell those guys, hey, I need to be here. I need to be here, and get them out of, try to get them out of the way. Because again, with the incoming plate, you're positioning than trying to potentially, work around and get, your view obstructed by, a potential player in the way. I did this last night when I was working the game. I just, hey guys, I need to be here. And, they moved. So something to keep in your back pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. Next play here to take a look at. So let's go back to our principles of obstruction. A fielder who, while not in possession of the baseball, impedes the progress of any runner. So here's the throw from right field into the plate. Catcher is there. Now we have a play. Do we have obstruction on this one? Let me get back there. So here it is, playing right field. Let's see. Do we have obstruction? Catcher's there. Good look at it. Do we have obstruction?
No.
Why not?
As he was in possession of the ball before the fielder arrived.
Absolutely. There's the answer. He's got possession of the baseball.
Sorry.
Yep. Good job, Pete. Yep. So he's got the possession of the baseball. Remember, all bets are off. We cannot call obstruction on a fielder who has possession of the baseball. Good job. And I think it's a very easy one for us to get. But again, to make sure that we understand our rule here in Little League, it's real important to note here that if you have the ball, you can block it. If you don't have the ball, you can't block it. It's literally that simple. So that's kind of why we threw in some of these more easy clips here that we'll kind of get to see. Here's our next play. Same deal. Do we have obstruction? Yes or no? So here we go. We get a ball out to the fence. Probably not a great decision to rotate on this play, but nonetheless, U1 gets to come in and make a call at the plate here. Obstruction, yes or no?
No.
Why not, Pete?
Same reason. Yeah, it's possession of the ball.
You got it, okay? Good job here of executing wedge fundamentals, especially in rotation in this four-umpire system. U1 works back down to point of plate, adjusts with the fielder up the line. You see him do this one. Okay, so he moves with the fielder. And then lastly, he stays in the window, keeps his head and eyes in between the runner and the fielder. Great use of eyes here. Sees the baseball, and then makes a call. Really good fundamentals there by that umpire. Another example here, this play is going to be at third base. Let's see if we've got obstruction, yes or no. So ground ball, plays it. Runner safe at first, out at first. Great play. And then we have subsequent action back into third. Obstruction, yes or no here?
No.
Great look here at this one. Chris, you say no. Why not?
Oh, it looked like he had the ball. Yeah, the ball's there before him.
Yep,
So.
You got it. Good look at this one here. Even though he's in the baseline, and obviously the runner has the right to the baseline. We'll see it come back here to us. Take a look at this runner. He does not slow down. He is not impeded by any stretch of the imagination. Great job here, okay? As an aside, let me go back to this one. Let's watch the work of our third base umpire, Kelly Dine from Ohio District 3. Does a great job of wedge positioning here. She works a mechanic known as point of base. I'll get it back here right to us. So as you see, she works down back towards the point of base. This gets her then in between the base and the third base coach's box. That's where we want to make sure we stay. That way we're not competing for viewing angle with the third base coach. So we want to make sure we get in front of this third base coach. And then we're going to cue off the fielder, okay? So same principles here. So we work point of base. That's our starting point, just as we work point of plate. And then we're going to adjust with the fielder. Fielder's out in front of the base, so we could probably go out a little bit further too. And as you see, Kelly's head and eyes right there are in between the window. She stays in the window there between the runner and the fielder. Good job there. Good call here of no call with regards to obstruction, just a normal out call. Again, because the fielder had the ball. Again, I know that these clips, these last three ones have basically had fielder with the ball. And I think it's important to note, if the fielder has the ball, they can block the base. But if they do not have the ball, at no point can they block the base here. And if they do so without possession of the ball and it impedes the runner, we then have obstruction in type A. Last clip here is coming up to us. This one's a little bit fuzzy here, a little bit hairy here in terms of what happened. So we get back to thinking here as this one goes on. All right, so ball up the box. Here comes the play at the plate. I'll slow it down here. A little bit of contact right there with our runner and our catcher. Ball bounces away. I'll rewind it here for us. Do we have obstruction on this one? I'll let the replays kind of come back here too. So continue to look at it. What are our thoughts here?
So in the replay, Stu, I can't really see the ball.
Okay. So the ball kind of short hops the catcher. So I'll let this one kind of roll through here. So here's the throw. Ball kind of short hops the catcher. He tries to play it off right there.
And then the ball you can see it from the center field angle. You can see the ball coming in right here.
And then
I see it then going away. Yeah.
It basically ricochets off the catcher. Then I think it bounces back off the hitter, and like the ball is like right here, right over the plate. Kind of looks like it's right in the strike zone. And then it bounces.
So he never really had possession of the ball.
Say that
I guess is the way you look at it. Did he at any time have possession of the ball? And I would say if I'm looking at it correctly based on the replay, I don't think he ever had possession of the ball.
So then how would you rule in this?
Which would be obstruction then.
Okay, good. Anybody agree, disagree with Tony?
100% agree.
Agree.
Yeah. You know, you got to kind of think about like who's in the wrong, so to speak. Remember, thrown ball, path to the plate here belongs to the runner. So if we do not have possession of the baseball and there's some contact here, no possession of the baseball will have obstruction on this case. Now, again, important to note here, there is nothing in our rule set that says that the fielder is protected as he's receiving a throw. The fielder is only protected on a batted ball. Okay, so this is a throw, so he has to not impede the runner here with regards to obstruction. So the home plate umpire here does a good job, does rule obstruction on this play, rules the runner safe. Now, as this one goes back through, I want to highlight a couple fundamentals here that are at play. So just in terms of U2, so let's kind of focus on U2. Matt, were you saying something? Go ahead.
Do you know why the home plate umpire was pointing out the runner?
No idea. No, I think he was probably trying to signal that was obstruction, and then just continued to go through. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, saying that he was signaling that was obstruction.
Yeah, either that or he was saying, "Hey, he's scoring," or something like that.
He was signaling that he was acknowledging that the runner touched home plate.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, so a couple things here. Let's focus on U2 here, all right? Because one of our point of emphasis is chest to ball. And one of the things here that I want us to think about with chest to ball is like we should be thinking about snapshots. So like we should literally be able to like move our chest like we're a camera, like, all right, there's a snapshot, and we're going to take snapshots here coming in. Now, obviously, he's got the potential batter runner coming in at second base who's going to advance on the throw to the plate. So there's a couple things here for us to make sure that we see, and that is to continue to work chest to ball. So if we take a look here, I think our plate umpire does a fantastic job here. He gets back into the wedge. He's on the base side hip. Could probably be a little bit closer, but I think he does a fantastic job here all around. So plate umpire, great fundamentals, starts point of plate, adjusts with the fielder, and then lastly uses his quiet steps to stay in the window. But take a look here at U2, okay? His back right now is where? To the play. And remember, chest to ball, snapshots, right? So as this play, as the ball goes through, remember, we're going to glance over our shoulders here to observe like touches, potential obstruction, and things like that. So we got to use our peripheral and head on a swivel here, but our chest has to be open to the ball. So this base umpire eventually kind of gets there, but as we see in this replay, take a look at U2 here. Take a look at our second base umpire. This play at the plate is occurring. And think about if you're in a 2-umpire system, what you may have to provide intel for, either in an argument or whatever else the case may be. So we've got to make sure that we are chest to ball here, all right? So that we continue to take snapshots and don't get so locked in on subsequent action here that we have to have. Remember, glance over your shoulders. We got to process information like touches, yes, like potential obstruction, potential interference, but chest to ball, take those snapshots here. We should see him turn with the baseball here as well. And then that would enable him to potentially get better position if we had like a throw that got cut off and came back to second base. So I think our plate umpire here does a fantastic job all around. Gets the obstruction call right, executes fundamentals of wedge really well. Just a key point here in terms of proper use of eyes and chest to ball to point out with U2.
Hey, Stu.
Yep, go ahead, Gary.
I put a question in on chat.
Go ahead.
To kind of dispel a myth. A couple, 3 years ago when the rule was being overhauled for Little League, one of the points was in possession of the ball and waiting to make the tag. That never really materialized in the current write-up of the rule. And some people still hold the thought that you've got to be set and ready to make the tag. And that unnecessarily complicates the obstruction decision.
Yeah, Gary, that's a great point. Again, very simple here. And Gary, that's a great segue here into my big takeaways here for us to go ahead and wrap things up. Like you said, if the fielder has the ball, he or she can block the base path. He doesn't have to, like you said, catch it and be ready to make that tag. So if you have the ball, if you have possession, you can block the base. If you don't have the ball, then you can't block the base. Very simple there. And then lastly, there is, as you said, Gary, here, great segue, no in the act of receiving the throw here provision in Little League in our obstruction rule. Okay, so there's really no protection on the fielder unless he or she is in possession of the ball. Good point. What else here in obstruction here, or anything else that may be fuzzy or needs to be cleared back up here as we get ready to go ahead and call it back here to order, so to speak?
Hey, Stu, I just want to go ahead.
Nope.
Forgive me, I've been distracted for most of this. Does Little League have a Type A and Type B obstruction?
We do. Type A, yeah, play being made on the runner, and then Type B we'll eventually get back to towards the end of the month. So, yeah, we'll look at Type B examples later on in the month. Today was just straight up top.
So that last video that you showed with the play being made on the runner with the obstruction would be Type A.
Yes.
And the ball would be killed.
Yes. Yep. So we're going to kill it there. Right. Yep. And then, like I said, on that play, a good one there, because you probably had like the batter runner almost to second base, get your eyes up, and then you can award accordingly. Remember, you're going to award base runners where they want to go, wherever you want to put them, had there been no obstruction. So that's your kind of guideline on subsequent runners. They go where you think they would have ended up had there been no obstruction. So, if that's first base, then you throw it back to first base. If it's second base, then you put them there. So that's why when we have obstruction, especially Type A, that's obstruction. Get your eyes up, time, take the spotlight, score the run, and then probably place the runner wherever you think they should be.
Yeah, all I was going to bring up, guys, is on that last clip when Stu was talking about chest to ball, remaining chest to ball allows us to passively officiate. And what I mean by that is we may not be actively in that specific play. So U2 in that instance is not actively in the play at home plate. But as Stu said, there could be pertinent information that U2 could provide. So we still have to passively officiate, and remaining chest to ball allows us to do that.
Yeah, great point. What else? Any other takeaways, thoughts, questions, anything like that here before we go ahead and get ready to wrap up? Question? Well, all right. I got a couple last minute things here just to throw out there, and then we'll have our little hangout time after we go ahead and end the recording. So you guys are all invited, obviously, to hang around if you can. That's great. Obviously, number one here, announcement wise, just back through. Remember here that we'll continue on next week, same time, same place. We'll look at rundowns specifically. So we'll revisit the Type A obstruction rule, which would be great. And then we'll really take a look at it in the context of rundowns and really how to officiate rundowns too. So we'll talk about obstruction and rundowns, which will be a really exciting kind of deal next week. Same time, same place, 12:30 next Friday. The other thing too, remember that we'll start to push out our feedback form, post-game feedback form. There'll be probably like 3 to 5, maybe 6 questions on there, just as you're working games. Like think about what you're working on, what went well, what didn't go so well. That way we have a communication between us all so that we can kind of see, you know, hey, what do you need help with? What should we be focusing on? Things like that. So be on the lookout for that one in an email from us, the Regional Advisory Committee, sometime here in the next week or so for that one. And then lastly, keep thinking about those focal points. Remember that the only way that we're going to build back the habits that we may be looking for to put us in position to succeed, the only way we'll build back those habits is if we take advantage of the easy plays. So as those routine plays come at you, use those eyes properly, chest the ball, take your snapshots, take the spotlight when you need to with interference, obstruction, or anything else, and keep working hard to get better one pitch at a time. Appreciate everybody's attention, participation here on the first episode of Obstruction Today. Again, same time, same place next week for Obstruction yet again, that time on Rundowns. Everybody have a great week, have a great weekend, and we'll see everybody then.